Hello class, my name is Liza Hoang, and tonight I will be presenting my findings for my project presentation, which I have focused on the General Services Administration, more specifically within the GSA, the Office of Chief Information Officer. For the agenda tonight, I will be giving you a quick overview of the problem in which I have done extensive research on. With the problem, how does this problem relate to the GSA, and what are the mandates from the Congress in regards to the new actions that are being applied to fix this problem. Once afterwards, we'll review the project objectives in which I conducted my research findings, the approach used within the GSA, the scorecard, and the methods of evaluation, and a proposed action plan with concluding with findings of my research. All right, so the problem. According to Rosabeth Moss Cantor, she quotes, "We are in troubled times now in the world." According to today's studies, the U.S. deficit is approximately $474 billion. We hear in the news about, in 2010, we had the furlough for 10 days with the federal government because we were over budgeted and we needed to cut back. And in addition to some of these overlying problems, many of the agencies within the federal government are facing aging IT systems, and there is a lack of accountability within the department in the program to help facilitate these changes. And I'm going to go a little bit more in detail about the accountability piece when we talk about the FITAR. But as an overview of the GSA, if you do not know who the GSA is currently already, the GSA is a federal agency within the United States that supplies products, communications, government offices, real estate, procurement, technology services, you name it, the GSA provides it, and they provide it as a service to other federal agencies. Another important piece that I'd like to go over is, as we talk about the GSA and the components of how they're implementing change, I focused on GSA IT, which is also referenced as the Office of Chief Information Officer, Office of CIO. So I'll use that interchangeably within the presentation, but for clarification, it's all one. So the GSA's mission, as I mentioned earlier, is to deliver value in real estate, acquisition, technology services to the government and to the American people. The values they stand by, which is integrity, transparency, and teamwork. Their goal to the American taxpayers and to the agency is to save, provide efficiency, and provide a high level of services. Their priorities are delivering better values and savings through serving other partners, expanding opportunities for small businesses, and making a more sustainable government, while leading with innovation and building a stronger GSA. Okay, so tying this back to the problem and why I chose this as my topic for a discussion, In December 19 of 2014, the Congress passed a Federal Information Technology Reform Act, which is also known as FITARA, to streamline and strengthen the federal IT acquisition process and promote the adoption of best practices from technology communities. In addition to improving how the government spends more than $80 billion on IT products and services, this reform will also improve the management and deployment of technologies across the federal government to achieve new efficiencies and savings. So what does this mean? What are they enacting? So they're telling everyone we need to have new technology, we need to have a better technology acquisition process. They're also, for agencies that don't have a CIO in place already, they're telling all the agencies, you're going to have a CIO if you don't already have one, and all of the power and the responsibility, which is currently going through the program management and the acquisition office, will now be directed towards the CIO, and they will have full authority over their own budget. By doing this, the hope is they can reduce the budget as a whole. In terms of my objectives for today's presentation, I'll be giving a close look to the model and the approach that the GSA used to implement change. We'll also be reviewing the metrics and the balanced scorecard to determine how and if the agency was effective with implementing these new changes. Third, we'll also review some of the outcomes and lessons learned and how it can be applied agency-wide. How is this applicable to other agencies? All right, the approach. During my survey of the individuals within the GSA organization, it was identified that in order for GSA to become one of the leading organizations to implement change, they deployed a positive outcome approach to organization development. What does this mean? So long story short, the FITARA was passed in December of 2014. In the year of 2012, organizational leaders came together and they first diagnosed the system and determined that the 11 offices that are currently spread across the United States needed to have a centralized office, and that would be created through the CIO. By identifying this, the organization knew that they had to, one, appoint a new CIO leader to head the operations, two, assess the gaps and implement a plan on how they were going to centralize the organization into one. This is a huge undertaking for the GSA. While in the process of diagnosing the environment and the changing factors within the organization in 2012, the approach that they used was a positive outcome. So they focused on the things that the GSA was doing correct and doing well, and they wanted to improve on that system to make that system better. And through that, they identified that they wanted to have all the programs implemented through and channeled through one office, which is the Office of the CIO. In addition to developing this action plan, they brought in external OD consultants to work with clients to identify the skills and gaps within the workforce to consolidate. Based on my interviews, the GSA used Deloitte as a consulting company to help with identifying the gaps in the skills. the OD consultants then used a survey to really dissect and understand what skills and what gaps were missing in order for them to effectively consolidate the department. Upon the survey, they realized that they needed additional resources, so they brought in additional consultants to help with the organizational planning and to help facilitate and to help, I guess what I'm trying to say is to help the organization transition from a decentralized to a centralized organization. They also had to implement, not only do they have to bring in new talent, they also had to cross-train the current employees there who lacked the skill sets to do this. So there were a series of steps that were taken. The GSA had a cross-training program, and then a rotational program. They also developed a JEDI training program in which individuals gain new skills so that they can transition into other departments and still have a job. One of the things that I thought was really interesting during my findings is the idea of right sizing. The idea of right sizing was a win-win approach in which instead of furloughing or instead of like letting go of the extra workforce, or when they identified the inefficiencies and the redundancies, the GSA had a pretty comprehensive plan where they identified the staff, the aging staff workforce, and calculated the percent of which that aging staff would retire. In addition to that, they also calculated the rate of which they felt millennials will most likely leave their jobs, because that is a common behavioral pattern of the millennials, which is to go into an organization, stay there within a year or two, and then leave that organization. So with these two workforce planning strategies, they were able to right-size and transition other folks who wanted to stay within the organization by training those who were staying. The outcome of this is they had very, very little people that they had to had to terminate, and the whole process almost naturally worked out on its own. It right-sized naturally on its own. Based on this approach and alignment, the GSA does a very nice job of identifying the mission and the vision and tying it into the IT goals, and also implementing measures to make sure they reach those goals. One of the approaches that they used was the large group open system approach, in which the GSA administrator has a town hall meeting where they invite all of the employees from all levels within the GSA, and it's a town hall where folks can give feedback, they can express their concerns, and it's also a great opportunity for people to give their ideas of how they can improve the system. Another great reason for having one of these is it also creates an opportunity for the GSA administrator and the leaders to reiterate and communicate the mission, the vision, and the purpose of their actions and their goals. In this slide right here, with the implementation of the scorecard, in November of 2015, the House of Congress as part of their FITARA implementation plan, they implemented a scorecard where all the agencies were graded across these 5 disciplines of data center consolidation, IT portfolio review, incremental development, risk assessment, and of course the final overall grade. This is the first year since the enactment in 2014 that they've implemented a scorecard. As you can see, of the agencies that were graded, the GSA scored pretty high. They scored a B as their overall grade, and they received, of the total 14 A's, they received at least 1 of them, which is pretty good. And in addition to this scorecard, one of the significant wins is that it shows that because the leaders were able to consolidate their government 2 years before the FITARA was implemented, it almost puts them ahead of the game, and properly got them in a position where they could score better on the balanced scorecard. So what does this mean for the GSA in terms of like the next steps in their strategic plan? Just to kind of to provide an overview, as I discussed the different steps of how they implemented change. In 2012 was when they consolidated GSA consolidated the 11 regional office into 1. Since then, there has been a new CIO. His name is David Shives, and for the year of 2015 to 2017, the GSA's strategic plan is to really develop the maturity model to sustain change. Within the strategic plan, they do talk about adapting an agile framework to quickly respond to external environmental changes. The agile methodology is incorporated incorporated within the strategic plan, and is also part of one of the metrics that drives business value and management practices. So it kind of goes back into this full circle of here's the plan, here's what we implement, and here's how we're evaluating. The metrics is a way for them to evaluate whether or not they're meeting their goals. So this is where we currently are within the GSA. They're still honing their services and maturing their model. And I'll, later down in this presentation, I'll be talking about the action plan and the next steps. Okay, so here we are, action plan, next steps. The FITARA and the governing body has outlined 5 key areas in which all agencies, including the GSA, need to devote their time on. The 5 areas for the IT management push is governance, budget, acquisition, organization, workforce, and program management. As we go back to the scorecard, I'm going to go back here. As we compare GSA overall grade relatively to all the other agencies, it's obvious that we're doing something that is correct. And because of that, the GSA is capable of really implementing an action plan where not only are they leading this development, but they're also the model for how other agencies can utilize their strategies to implement the FITARA within the other agencies who are not so high on the scorecard. In terms of governance, the CIO already consolidated and gave the CIO full authority over the budget. And the next steps for them is to continue working on engaging departments and developing the IT portfolio to create consistencies in the policies and the framework. Now that the CIO is a critical member of the budget process, the next step is for the CIO to work closely with the CFO to developing the budget, and eventually down the road, as all CIOs need to report to Congress, they can easily negotiate and actively participate with Congress to ask for money and reallocate funds much easier, as opposed to going through the acquisition process. And as we talk about acquisition, the GSA is also deploying a evidence-based practice in which they can build business case analysis and have a more cohesive, sound argument for implementing new systems and acquiring new technologies. And through that, they will also, as part of their strategic plan, track data for whether or not those projects are successful, and if they are reducing the budget. For organization and workforce, one thing I really liked about the CIO, David Shaggs, is in his biography, or in his a profile, it talks about how he was also the acting acting chief director of human resources. So it kind of ties this idea of, here are our needs within the organization and in the workforce, and these are the things that we're going to be doing to ensure that we have the right folks in place to implement these new changes. And so at GSA, the strategic workforce, the CIO is an active member within the planning, the recruitment, and the development of new leaders. And lastly, for program management, their plan is to just continue to effectively measure and update the disciplines based on the annual survey results of the balanced scorecard, and to really implement, keep their eyes and ears to the industry best practices and implementing them within the organization. For the methods that I use to collect data, I interviewed 3 individuals within the organization. They varied from the top, which would be the chief of staff, to the group level, who would be the manager who's in charge of the different director of portfolio management, and then the individual level, which would be the IT strategist and planner who helped implement the change. My questions that I had for them were primarily focused around how they implemented the change and whether or not the implementation that they implemented was successful. From my findings, and based on what I spoke earlier, it sounds like, and it seems like, the model approach that the GSA used to implement the change was very successful. They were, and this kind of goes into my conclusion and findings, they implemented the change from the top level downward. They had leaders and followers had a good understanding of the goal, the values, and the mission of the organization. They used a blended model approach with one understanding what their positive, what their strengths were within the organization, and really exploiting those strengths, and also utilizing the action approach model, in which it was like a scientific approach to how they can implement the change. In addition to that, they also utilized the Agile framework to create innovation and to really inspire folks to think outside the box and solve difficult problems. An example of that would be when Dave Shives became the CIO. He hosts these hackathons within the GSA where they invite the public and GSA employees to really find solutions to complex ideas and problems. I thought that was pretty interesting and very cool within the organization. And another finding that I thought was very interesting is through the success of the process of what the GSA deployed, they're turning these successes, the consolidation of their IT programs in the regional offices, they're turning their process into a service that they can provide now to other federal agencies. So it's like they're almost refining in documenting, and now they're using that process as the model approach and the process to how other agencies can implement the new FITARA reform. And finally, in conclusion, transparency is one of the most important parts of accountability, and for purposes of why I chose this research project as a basis of understanding organizational development and change. The FITARA is a reform that was largely created because there was no accountability, and everyone was spending way too much money in terms of like their IT systems, and we just needed to reduce and start saving. And the GSA is creating methods to help improve that transparency. It's through not only developing the strategic plan, communicating that plan effectively, sharing the results and the wins, and opening up the table of discussion for all individuals within the organization through town hall meetings and hackathons. But it's also really being accountable and really taking the budget and the deficit really seriously, and really trying to reduce it. And with that being said, that concludes my findings, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation today.